What if the only thing standing between you and the life you deserve is the belief that someone else gets to decide your value? Have you ever noticed how people treat you differently, not based on who you are, but how you carry yourself? And what if chasing approval from others is actually the reason you've never felt truly at peace? Take a moment, just one quiet moment, to remind yourself of something most people forget in the noise of the world. You are the only one who truly knows your worth. Not your boss with the performance reviews. Not your best friend who sees you through their own insecurities. Not the strangers online who click, scroll, and comment without ever knowing your story. Just you. You hold the final say. And here's the beautiful paradox: the minute you begin to trust in that truth, something powerful happens. People start to respond to you differently. They sense it. The world has a funny way of reflecting your self-image back to you. When you carry yourself with quiet, grounded confidence, not arrogance, but certainty, others begin to treat you as someone worthy of respect. It's not magic, it's energy. But if you move through life unsure of yourself, overthinking your every word, worrying about being liked or judged or misunderstood, people pick up on that too. Insecurity has its own frequency, and people sense it even before a word is spoken. Now, let's make one thing clear: confidence doesn't mean you never fall, never get rejected, never mess up. That's a myth. Real confidence is deeper. It's a quiet voice inside that says, even if I fail, I'll rise. Even if I'm misunderstood, I know who I am. Even if I'm alone, I am still whole. It's that trust in your own ability to navigate whatever life throws at you that frees you. Once you trust yourself, fear loses its grip. Criticism doesn't shake you. Rejection doesn't define you. And that's when something extraordinary happens. You stop being easily bothered. You stop living on edge. You stop bending yourself into shapes that don't feel like home just to win someone else's approval. Because here's the truth that most people spend their whole lives avoiding: approval is a prison when it comes at the cost of your peace. So many people dress a certain way, speak in a certain tone, and act like someone they're not, all to avoid being judged, all to fit in. But in doing so, they slowly hand over their emotional well-being to others. Think about it. When your sense of worth is dependent on how others see you, they hold the keys to your happiness. If they praise you, you feel validated. If they ignore you, you feel invisible. If they criticize you, you spiral. It's a dangerous way to live, because it means your peace is always on the auction block, waiting for someone else to place a bid. But here's a liberating truth: what people think of you has almost nothing to do with you. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they are. Their opinions are shaped by their experiences, wounds, fears, and filters. One person might see you as incredible, driven, inspiring, magnetic. Another might see you as arrogant or average or even a threat. Who's right? Neither. Because opinions aren't facts, they're mirrors. They reflect back the mind that holds them. Once you understand that, their power over you dissolves. You begin to walk lighter. You stop performing and start living. This hunger for approval, it's not your fault. It's been baked into you since childhood. Gold stars, good grades, a pat on the back when you color inside the lines. From the very start, we're taught to seek validation outside of ourselves. But if you don't outgrow that lesson, you'll live your whole life chasing applause instead of alignment. And here's the real danger: the more you chase approval, the further you drift from your own voice. You become a version of yourself curated for acceptance, not truth. That's not living, that's surviving. So the question is, what does life look like when you finally stop performing and begin to live from a place of inner truth? That's where we'll go next, as we open the door to the next chapter. You'll begin to see something extraordinary happen the moment you stop living for the approval of others and start living in alignment with your truth. But to sustain that confidence, there's one more thing you must understand. You could be the kindest person in the room, the most dedicated, the one who always shows up, who gives your best, and someone will still find a reason to criticize you. Maybe you're too quiet, maybe you're too direct, maybe they're envious, or maybe they just don't get you. But you know what? The reason doesn't matter, because the truth is, you will never please everyone. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to. So why do we keep trying? Why do we keep chasing validation from people who might not even care tomorrow? Why would we ever place our self-worth in something as unstable as public opinion? The moment you stop seeking validation, everything shifts. A new clarity takes root. You begin to make choices based on what you truly desire, not what others might applaud. You stop overanalyzing every move. You stop rehearsing every word in your head, afraid of being misunderstood. You stop walking on eggshells in conversations, afraid to step on someone's fragile expectations. And ironically, that's when people start to respect you the most. When they see that you no longer need their approval to feel secure. They're drawn to your grounded energy. There's a quiet power in that. Confidence doesn't need to shout. It speaks volumes just by being. Because real confidence isn't external, it's internal. It comes from knowing who you are and standing in that truth. With or without applause, the more rooted you are in yourself, the more magnetic your presence becomes. Of course, that doesn't mean you shut out all feedback. Growth comes from learning, but there's a vast difference between welcoming constructive feedback and being addicted to praise. One helps you rise, the other keeps you small. So what's the key? Build a filter, a strong one. If feedback helps you grow, welcome it. Embrace it. But if it's just noise, criticism without depth, opinion without understanding, let it go. Let it pass by like a train you don't need to board. And here's the real power in letting go of external validation. You become immune to manipulation. People can't guilt trip you, can't pressure you into choices that don't align with your values, can't control your emotions with their approval or withdrawal of attention. Because your worth is no longer up for negotiation. You stop fearing rejection. You stop performing to prove yourself. You stop shrinking to fit spaces you were never meant for. And in that sacred place of wholeness, you become free. At the end of the day, ask yourself this: whose life are you living? Your parents? Your friends? Society's? Or your own? Because if you're living for the approval of people who might not even remember your name next week, when do you get to live for yourself? When do you matter? And once you answer that question, truly answer it, nothing and no one will ever shake your peace again. It all begins with perspective. Because how you see a situation determines how you feel about it. Two people can walk through the exact same storm. One comes out bitter. The other comes out wiser. Why? Because one of them knows how to shift the lens. And in the next part, we'll dive deeper into this hidden superpower, the ability to change how you interpret your reality. And in doing so, transform the way you feel. So what happens when you begin to shift your perspective, when you choose how to feel instead of letting others choose for you? That's when real freedom begins to take root. Let's talk about something that happens to all of us: criticism. Someone says something negative about you, and your first instinct? You feel that sharp sting in your chest. Your defenses rise. You want to explain yourself, prove them wrong, correct the record. You want to protect your pride. But what if, just for a moment, you didn't react like that? What if you paused and looked at it from a different angle? What if, instead of taking it personally, you saw criticism as data, as neutral information? Because here's the truth: criticism only has power over you if you give it meaning. It's either valuable feedback that can help you grow, or it's just static, meaningless noise, revealing far more about the person speaking than it does about you. Either way, there's no reason to take offense. Once you begin to see criticism as either useful or irrelevant, it loses its emotional grip on you. You stop giving it space in your mind. You stop replaying it. You stop feeding it with your attention. And the same applies to difficult people. You know the type, the ones who are rude, negative, passive-aggressive, or just seem determined to ruin your mood. They show up in traffic, at work, online, sometimes even at your dinner table. But what if you stopped seeing them as enemies and started seeing them as tests? What if that rude person was actually an opportunity to practice your patience? What if, instead of letting them knock you off balance, you saw them as your personal trainer, helping you build emotional control, inner peace, and resilience? Suddenly, they're no longer the source of your frustration, they become the fuel for your growth. They go from being a drain to being your training ground. And that mindset shift, it changes everything. Now here's a question to sit with. How often do you let something tiny ruin your entire day? A snide comment, a spilled coffee, an awkward moment, a mistake you made that nobody else even noticed. We let these small moments that won't matter in a week, let alone a year, hijack our peace. Why do we give them that much power? Because we zoom in too closely. We magnify the small and forget the big picture. But when you learn to zoom out, to widen your perspective, you realize how temporary and trivial most things really are. And once you see that, you stop letting the small stuff steal your joy. Most of us grow up thinking other people are responsible for how we feel. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you say, "They made me mad." A co-worker says something snarky, you say, "They ruined my day." But here's the truth, no one has that kind of power over you, unless you hand it to them. No one can make you feel angry, frustrated, inferior, or hurt, unless you agree to it. That's your power, and once you reclaim that power, you become emotionally untouchable. Think about it. Two people can go through the same experience, one shrugs it off with a laugh. The other carries it around for days like a weight on their chest. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in how they chose to process it. Because that's the key, how you respond to life is always your choice. When you explode in anger, it's not because someone made you. It's because, in that moment, you chose, even if unconsciously, to let their behavior reach you, to let it sink into your core. Now, you might say, "But I can't help it. When someone disrespects me, I just snap." But that's not the full truth. The truth is, you've built a habit, a reflex, and like any habit, it can be changed. Imagine what could happen if, the next time someone tried to push your buttons, you didn't react automatically. Instead, you paused, just for a second. Because in that single second, that tiny space between action and reaction, lies your greatest power. And in the next part, we'll explore how to expand that space and take full command of your emotional world. In the last part, we paused at a powerful truth between every trigger and your response. There's a gap, and within that gap lies your greatest strength. But what happens when you begin to use that space intentionally, consistently? That single moment of pause, of choosing not to react automatically, gives you back your power. In that space, you ask yourself the most important question: is this even worth my energy? And most of the time, when you're honest with yourself, the answer is simple: no. Let's put this in perspective. Imagine someone walks up to you and offers you a gift, but you don't take it. You leave your hands by your side. Who does the gift belong to now? Still them. Now replace that gift with criticism, with anger, with an insult. If someone throws negativity at you, you don't have to catch it. You don't have to hold it. You can leave it exactly where it belongs, with them. That's their burden, not yours. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. This isn't about being passive or ignoring disrespect. It's about choosing not to hand over your peace. About deciding that your internal world is not a playground for other people's chaos. Think about it. If someone tries to offend you, and you stay calm, who really lost? They did, because their goal was to get under your skin. And they failed. Now ask yourself this: who are the strongest people you know? Are they the ones who lash out every time they're provoked? Or are they the ones who stay composed, grounded, calm, and focused, no matter what comes their way? Real strength isn't loud. It isn't in shouting over others or demanding attention. Strength is silent. Strength is still. Strength is having control over your emotions instead of letting your emotions control you. And here's where it becomes even more powerful: when you stop reacting. People lose their control over you. The co-worker who always tried to provoke you, the moment they realize you don't care, they'll stop trying. The person who loved to criticize you, when their words no longer rattle you, they'll either back down or disappear entirely. Because here's a simple truth: people only have power over you when you give it to them. It's the same reason you don't get angry when a child throws a tantrum in the grocery store. You don't take it personally. You recognize that they're still learning, and you let it go. So what if you started applying that same mindset to adults? What if you saw a rude comment not as an insult, but as a reflection of the speaker's insecurity? What if you stopped taking personal offense, and started seeing negativity for what it really is, a mirror showing someone else's unresolved pain? You'd stop wasting energy fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. You'd walk away lighter, freer, clearer. At the end of the day, life becomes much easier when you realize one truth: you, not your boss, not your family, not strangers online, you are in charge of your emotions. And when you master that, when you stop handing the remote control of your peace to everyone else, you'll find yourself grounded, confident, and emotionally unshakable. Because that's what confidence really is: it's armor. When you have it, the words and actions of others can't pierce you. They bounce off, they dissolve. But when you lack confidence, everything stings. Every glance feels like judgment. Every word feels like a threat. That's why some people walk through life on edge, defensive, offended, exhausted, not because the world is truly against them, but because, deep down, they haven't fully anchored themselves. But when you do, when you truly know who you are and what you're worth, you stop living like a target and start living like a foundation. And in the next part, we'll uncover exactly how to build that kind of confidence, one that doesn't need to shout, because it already knows its own worth. So what does real confidence look like? The kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't waver, and doesn't fall apart when others judge, criticize, or try to provoke you. It begins with trust, not in others, but in yourself. When you truly trust yourself, not just in moments of strength but in moments of doubt, failure, or uncertainty, nothing anyone says can shake you. Their words may reach your ears, but they won't reach your soul. They won't leave marks. Now, think back for a moment. Remember the last time someone's words got under your skin. The insult, the side comment, the passive-aggressive jab. Why did it bother you? Was it because what they said was true? Or was it because, deep down, some part of you feared it might be? That's the part most people never stop to notice. Insults only hurt when they poke at a wound that already exists. Words don't pierce the skin unless there's already a crack beneath the surface. Imagine this: If you walked up to a lion and called it weak, it wouldn't even flinch. It wouldn't roar back. It wouldn't growl in defense. Why? Because it knows what it is. It doesn't need your approval to feel powerful. It doesn't need your praise to remember its nature. But call an insecure person weak, and what happens? They might get angry, defensive, dismissive, not because the insult is accurate, but because they haven't yet convinced themselves that it's false. That's why building confidence is not about looking strong, it's about feeling secure in who you are, even when no one else validates it. Confidence is the inner knowing that you're worthy, even when no one claps, that you're enough, even when others try to cut you down. When you believe in yourself, you stop outsourcing your worth. You stop relying on likes, compliments, or acceptance to feel good about yourself. You stop needing people to like you. You stop needing them to understand you. You stop needing them to agree with you. And the moment you stop needing validation, you become untouchable. Because here's the truth, most people who criticize others aren't trying to help them grow, they're trying to shrink them. They tear others down to lift themselves up. It's not power, it's projection. It's their own insecurity, disguised as superiority. But when you don't react, when you stay calm, grounded, and unmoved, their power evaporates. Their effort to control you fails. Their words fall flat. Because confidence isn't arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone. It's about knowing you have nothing to prove. A truly confident person doesn't need to fight every battle. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need to explain themselves over every little thing. Why? Because they know who they are, and that's enough. And when you live from that place, a place of deep-rooted assurance, life becomes lighter, softer, clearer. You stop overthinking what people think of you. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop turning small comments into internal catastrophes. But let's be honest, confidence isn't something you're born with. It's not a personality trait. It's a habit, a muscle, something you build through choices, especially the hard ones. Every time you stand by a decision, you strengthen it. Every time you ignore someone's doubt, you reinforce it. Every time you refuse to let someone's negativity shape your identity, you grow stronger. And just like a muscle, the more you use it, the more resilient it becomes. The more you trust yourself, the less anyone else can shake you. So how do you start? Stop seeking approval. Stop waiting for someone to tell you that you're enough. The moment you realize that you don't need validation, you take your power back. If someone criticizes you, let them. If someone doubts you, let them. Their opinion does not rewrite your truth. And here's the ironic twist, the moment you stop caring what people think, is the moment they start respecting you more. Because people can feel when you're rooted. They sense when you're no longer for sale. And that kind of inner certainty, it's rare, it's powerful, it's magnetic. Now, it's not always easy to shift your perspective in the heat of the moment. Especially when your emotions want to speak louder than your wisdom. But it's a skill, a discipline, and it's one worth mastering. And in the next part, we'll talk about exactly that, how to hold your center when life pushes you off balance, and how to train your mind to protect your peace before emotion has the chance to steal it. So how do you protect your peace? Even when life feels loud, messy, or unkind, it starts with one small habit, and it has the power to transform everything. The next time something annoys you, a sharp word, a rude comment, a sudden inconvenience, pause, just for a second, and ask yourself, is this really worth my energy? Almost every time, you'll discover the answer is no. Not because you're ignoring reality, but because you're choosing where to spend your emotional currency. And once you start practicing that habit, once you consistently train yourself to step back and see the bigger picture, something powerful happens. You become unshakable, because in the end, peace doesn't come from controlling everything around you. People, traffic, gossip, delays, that's the weather of life. It changes, it shifts, it storms, but peace? Peace comes from how you see it, from what you choose to give meaning to. And when you master that, your perspective, nothing and no one can truly disturb you again. There's a simple truth that most people overlook: if you don't take something seriously, it can't hurt you. Think about it. The things that hurt the most are often the ones we give the most weight to, the most power, the most space in our minds. If someone insults you and you internalize it, it stings, it lingers, it eats at you. But if you laugh, if you shrug it off and decide it's not even worth noticing, it loses all its power. That's the secret. Humor and indifference, they are shields. Powerful ones, because they protect you without you needing to fight, without you needing to explain, without you needing to absorb every toxic word that comes your way. People who go through life constantly offended, always on edge, looking for something to take personally, they suffer the most. Not because life is harsher to them, but because they absorb everything. They take it all in like a sponge soaking up dirty water. And when you carry all of that, you weigh yourself down. Here's the reality: there will always be negativity. There will always be difficult people. Always someone who criticizes, someone who gossips, someone who tries to get under your skin. But here's the question: will you let them? Will you let their noise become your inner voice? Or will you rise above it? When you learn to laugh at the things meant to hurt you, you take away their sting. When you stop giving energy to nonsense, it stops affecting your life. If someone tries to bring you down, don't fight them. Don't feed them your peace. Smile, walk away, move forward. Now, that doesn't mean you let people trample your boundaries. It doesn't mean you ignore real issues or stay silent in the face of injustice. It simply means this: you stop wasting your energy on what doesn't deserve your attention. Because the truth is, most people who try to upset you aren't doing it because of you. They're doing it because of them. Because they're unhappy, insecure, needing attention, craving reaction. And when you react, when you fire back, when you explain and justify, you give them exactly what they wanted. You hand them control. But when you stay calm, when you don't engage, when you refuse to play their game, you take back your power. Completely. Nothing frustrates a manipulative person more than realizing they can't get to you, that their effort failed, that their tactics are invisible to your peace. And this is where indifference becomes your superpower. If humor is your shield, indifference is your armor. When you reach the place where people's negativity doesn't even register, when you no longer feel the urge to respond, to correct, to fight every battle, that's real strength. That's emotional maturity. Some may say, but isn't ignoring negativity weak? No, it's not weakness. It's control. It's knowing your peace is too valuable to be spent on things that don't matter. It's knowing that silence is sometimes louder than any reaction. And in the next part, we'll explore how to build this emotional armor from the inside out, how to stay calm not just in moments of peace, but especially when pressure rises and the world tests your limits. So how do you protect your energy in a world that constantly tries to drain it? It starts with knowing this: your peace is more valuable than your pride. And your mind is more valuable than any momentary argument. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every battle deserves your presence. And not every offense is worth your reaction. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is to walk away in silence. And not because you couldn't respond, but because responding would have cost you something far greater: your time, your focus, your inner calm. Your energy is your currency. Every thought, every reaction, every word you speak, you're spending it. So ask yourself, are you investing it, or wasting it? Spend it on things that build you, that grow you, that ground you. Don't waste it on things that drain you, arguments that go nowhere. People who aren't listening, or opinions rooted in ego, not truth. So the next time someone tries to push your buttons, don't give him the satisfaction. Smile, shrug, walk away, because the moment you stop letting petty things get to you, when you laugh, stay calm, and remain indifferent to nonsense, that's the moment you become untouchable. You stop dancing to the rhythm of other people's chaos. You stop playing their games. And you rise above it all, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Some people think strength means always winning, always having the last word, always making sure others know you're right. But real strength is the ability to walk away. It's the quiet courage to say, this isn't worth my peace. It's the clarity to know your energy is sacred, and it should never be spent trying to convince someone who's already made up their mind. The strongest people in the room aren't the loudest. They're not the ones fighting every battle, pointing every finger, defending every belief. They're the ones who know when to stay silent, who know when to step back, who know when to let things go, not because they lost, but because they chose not to lose themselves. The need to be right is one of the oldest, deepest traps we fall into. It pulls us into endless debates, drains our spirit, and leaves us frustrated over things that rarely matter in the long run. Think about it. How many times have you seen two people locked in a debate over something completely trivial? Neither willing to back down, both needing to be right. And at the end of it, what's left? No peace, no joy, no connection, just a drained mind, a bruised ego, and maybe even a damaged relationship. That's not a victory. That's a loss, masked as pride. Letting go of the need to win every argument doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've evolved. It means you value peace over pride, growth over ego, purpose over proving a point. Because not every opinion deserves your challenge. Not every provocation requires your attention. Some people argue for the sake of arguing. Some are too deeply rooted in their own mindset to change, no matter how clear your logic is. And some just want to get a rise out of you. The best thing you can do? Don't give them one. When you refuse to engage with negativity, you strip it of its power. When you stop feeding into chaos, it stops growing in your life. People can only argue with you if you argue back. They can only disturb your peace if you open the door and let them in. But the moment you decide, truly decide, that your energy is too valuable to waste on small, petty conflicts, everything changes. You begin to move differently, think differently, choose differently. You become grounded, steady, unshakable, not because life stopped testing you, but because you stopped answering every invitation to war. And yes, it takes maturity, it takes growth, and above all, it takes courage to stay silent when your ego wants to shout. In the next part, we'll explore how to develop that maturity, how to train yourself to respond with intention instead of impulse, and how to build the kind of emotional strength that speaks louder than words ever could. There is a quiet kind of strength, not loud, not flashy, but unwavering. A strength that doesn't need to announce itself, because its presence is felt. A strength that doesn't react to every insult, every distraction, every invitation to chaos, because it knows that control over one's mind is the highest form of power. When you learn to master that kind of stillness, your entire life begins to shift. You stop feeling the need to defend yourself to people who misunderstand you. You stop wasting hours replaying conversations in your head. You stop measuring your worth by how others respond to you. Instead, you begin choosing peace before pride, presence before reaction, and clarity before ego. But let's be honest, it's not easy. The world will tempt you to react. People will test you. Your ego will flare up, demanding to be heard, to be right, to be seen. But every time you choose to pause, breathe, and respond with wisdom rather than impulse, you are training a new kind of muscle. An inner discipline, a deeper resilience. And that kind of self-control, it doesn't just protect your peace, it transforms your life. Because when you can sit in silence while being provoked, when you can stay calm when someone tries to ignite your anger, when you can smile when someone wants you to snap, you are no longer reacting from emotion, but leading from intention. You become a force, unshaken, centered, unmoved by noise, and deeply, quietly powerful. The truth is, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not anymore. You've already walked through storms. You've already survived battles no one saw. And you're still here, standing. Not every opinion deserves your explanation. Not every attack deserves your reaction. And not every moment deserves your energy. Your greatest power is not what you can say, but what you can walk away from. So when the moment comes, and it always does, when someone pushes you, when the chaos calls, when your pride wants to take the lead, choose stillness. That's where your strength lives now. If this message has reminded you of your worth, of your voice, of your power to choose peace in a world that profits from noise, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel, Dr. G_check_official Johnoni Success. This isn't just a place for motivation. It's a journey, a space where we rise together, in silence, in strength, and in purpose. Let this be your reminder. You were never here to argue for your limitations. You were born to rise, quietly, and walk forward boldly. And we'll walk it together. One choice, one breath, one day at a time.